Okay, now correct me if I'm wrong, but if I understood your model and other similar models, for the people who are forecast to have that outcome, to be rearrested for another domestic violence, the statistical model classifies people in that group, and among the people who are classified as high risk, the forecast accuracy rate is something like 22%, right? Which is not...
Okay, now you're getting into a technical problem. We can go there if you wish.
Yes.
The policy position that's taken is that it's much more dangerous to release Darth Vader than to incarcerate Luke Skywalker.
Yes.
That is a policy call. The policymakers are very sophisticated about this. All sorts of different stakeholders understand it, including victims advocates groups who generally agree with the stakeholders. They'd much rather not have Darth Vader running around in their neighborhood. So that is built into the forecast and leads to a choice to be much more accepting of weaker statistical evidence for Darth Vader, because we don't want to miss them, than we would accept for the Luke Skywalkers. That's a policy call.
And so just to clarify for the audience, this means that when a risk assessment instrument or algorithm is developed, the developers of the algorithm, whether it's the programmers or the stakeholders, as in Richard's case, he solicited this decision from the stakeholders, set a risk threshold at which they will classify someone as high risk or likely to have the outcome of concern. And that risk threshold is a statistical probability that a person will have the outcome of concern, whether it's rearrest or rearrest for a specific crime. Now, in Richard's case, the policy stakeholders thought that it would be much worse to accidentally release someone who then did have the outcome of concern than it would to detain someone who, in fact, would not have had that outcome had he been released. And so that led to setting the risk threshold around 20%, 22%, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, no, that isn't quite the way it was done. But yes, qualitatively, that's the good description.
Right. Now, one follow-up question to you. It is my understanding that that same decision must be made in the development of any risk instrument, including a checklist instrument.
Absolutely.
Can you explain how it happens?
Well, what happens is that they run these regressions, and Sonia's absolutely right. It's mysterious where those weights come from, and when you try to reconstruct them by reverse engineering, you can't. But those risk scores are tallied up, and then they look at some data and see for different scores the proportion of individuals in the past who created problems. And they draw a line at some point. So if 70% of individuals with this score reoffend, that's high enough, bang, everybody over that score gets classified as high risk.
So final question on this point, and then we'll move on. Do any of you know, for the current risk assessment instruments in use, for people who are classified as high risk, what is the statistical likelihood of reoffense for that group?
It really depends on the application. In some of them, you're almost certain. In some of them, it's very unlikely. It depends on the kind of crime and the kind of individual. That's the point. There's variation in the risk, and the instruments that are used are differentially effective in predicting that risk. But it's, again, I keep saying, it's much better than current practice. We will be releasing more people from prison and from jail if we use these, and our decisions will be better informed.